scheduled meeting of the Jenks Aquarium Authority. Today is Tuesday, November 21st of 2023. The time is 5 p.m. My name is Corey Box, and I'll be your chair for this evening. We're going to start off with a call to order. Mr. Macy, can you please verify our attendance?
Montgomery. Here. Murray.
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
OJ. Rowe. Brown.
Here.
Chairbox.
Here. Item number one, tonight's business is consideration and appropriate action relating to a request for our approval of tonight's consent agenda. If anyone would like to pull anything from the consent agenda, you may do so at this time. If not, we'll consider a motion for approval as is.
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have a proper motion and a second on item one. Let's vote, please.
Montgomery.
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Chairbox.
Yes. Okay, item two we will pull. Moving on to item three. Item three is a discussion related to parking for the Inspiration Hall development. We are on page 64 if you're able to find it, which I believe is page 1. Oh, actually, if you look in the very top right and you get a magnifying glass out, it does say page 64 of something up there in the corner. Who's leading the discussion, Mr. Shrout?
I'll start.
Mr. Shrout.
Chair and members of the authority, we have the food hall, which has been approved by the OAF and has a conditional PUD based on parking requirements. And so we've had discussions with the developer, the city and the developer, and then the developer and the OAF. And I think that we thought it was appropriate to discuss this at tonight's meeting. The proposed plans for the food hall, the land that they're planning to go on does not have enough space for parking. And so we've been talking about shared parking for quite some time, and I thought that it would be appropriate to talk about potentially having a shared parking agreement, whether it's with the JAA or if there's land, if the JAA doesn't think there's enough parking to provide the parking that's necessary for the food hall, to have parking somewhere else on the campus, potentially where land that OAF owns. And so I think this is kind of an open-ended, kind of start the discussion and see where we are on the availability of additional parking on the aquarium campus. I know that the developers here, along with their consultants, and they have done some initial parking studies that show somewhere in the range of like 200 to 300 spaces needed. And I think in our discussions with them, they think that those spaces would be needed when the aquarium is closed, not necessarily when the aquarium is open. And so I don't know if Matt or Keith has any additional info from your discussions with the developer, or if the developer would like to come up, or one of the consultants, and discuss, you know, the number of spaces, the use, and how we can get some sort of shared parking agreement. I know that I had a meeting with Robbie, and we talked about, I explained that the hotel, for instance, uses land that is owned by the foundation, and they have a land lease, and that, you know, whatever that formula is, the hotel usually pays between $50,000 to $70,000 a year to use the land where the hotel is. And so Robbie and I had talked, and I said, you know, maybe there would be something that would be amenable to the foundation and to the JAA if the food hall would pay something like $20,000 to $25,000 a year to have the shared parking, and that would go towards keep basically maintaining the existing parking that they would be using. And so again, this is kind of starting a discussion to see, is there an appetite for this? If not, what are some alternatives? And so I really, you know, I don't know if any of the members of the authority have any thoughts on this.
Well, before we jump in, can we get the latest site plan, and can we get an idea of an image of what we're looking at by any chance? At least we can give you a minute or two to find it. Yeah, that exhibit's trash. That's not going to work. Do we have the plat from however many months ago when we looked at there? Okay, do we even know what the required parking spaces and all that are? Can we at least start with some kind of baseline?
Well, in the site plan, I think the whole point is that the concept uses up all of the space that would be owned by the developer. And so
Yeah.
in order to park it, we need off-site parking.
Okay, so so the original design, we're not even at, is the original design long gone? We've moved on, right? It doesn't look anything like it did? Okay, so, and there's 0 parking in the new design? And that's
Yeah, there'd always been
Yeah,
no parking on site. And
Okay.
even when the PUD was approved, the PUD was approved subject to
Yeah.
a parking agreement with whether it's the foundation or the
Okay.
aquarium authority.
okay. All right,
And because a significant amount of time has passed since the PUD approval and, there's no parking agreement yet, that's why we thought we should at least have a discussion about
yeah.
what would it take to get a parking agreement approved by the JAA.
Okay. Keith, you want to get us started?
I can,
Or
I can start
Matt?
us off.
Okay, that's fine. My apologies, Matt. Keith's never had a loss for words, so I just assumed he'd lead, but,
Well, I do also think it's probably wise to start with a baseline. And my impression, just from meeting with the developer, was, and I know they've paid for 2 parking studies at the behest of the city in order to, but I believe the 2 studies were indicated needs in the 300 to 400 range, if I'm not mistaken. And I know for comparison, the main parking lot of the aquarium is 500 spaces. That's with the recent expansion. When Carolina, the president of OAF, and myself sat down with the developers, we were trying to find any solution to this parking problem, because it's been a problem since the dawn of this project, really. So one solution was this shared parking agreement, which is what we can discuss today, whether that's feasible. OAF, if you're looking at what's on the screen, OAF has 4 acres, 4.8 acres west of Aquarium Drive, kind of underneath those power lines, that grass. And so that is another potential location for parking. And obviously, subject to OAF approval, but I think OAF would consider such a use.
Chris, what's the latest on where the cursor is right now? I know at some point in the past, we had what was it, the Bark Place? Is there any new or recent interest in development under the power lines near the levee?
No.
In your professional opinion, what's the best use of that green space right there?
Well, I mean, we have renderings of potential retail or restaurant, either east or west of the power lines, and parking underneath the power lines. So I guess, but getting back to the shared parking, I guess the question would be, is there an appetite to have shared parking? And if so, would there be some sort of reimbursement if there is an appetite for it with the existing parking?
Okay, well, let's theorize here. Sharing what parking lot?
Well, okay, so you see the hotel to the north and the quarantine building to the south. There's, I think it's something like 80 spaces, 88 spaces that is
Employee.
currently employee parking. That would be right next to the food hall, if the food hall goes there. And then you have an additional 400 spaces that aren't shown here, but underneath the power lines. And so the existing parking lot there is 300, and then we added about 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our existing lot's around 500 now.
Mhm.
I would say, yeah, you keep using the word appetite. There's some of an appetite, but I think at some point, I think it's going to be, we can't keep encouraging this kind of growth without anybody bringing parking to the equation. The primary goal for me is the preservation of the aquarium. That is still always going to be, I mean, you heard what the Lieutenant Governor said, and we're not going to take up their parking spaces with anything, any kind of development. So I guess we need to get it, so the applicant does have a study in which they've determined how many parking spaces they would need throughout the day and throughout the week? Okay. All right. Well, I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think, Kenny and Keith, and then we'll kind of figure out what everyone's opinion is here. Then we can kind of muddle on through and get down to Kenny and see. What do you think, Keith? Were you?
Well, I know we've had recent discussions with Kenny, and we can talk about it more, but, you know, the area of the existing large animal quarantine, which will go away at some point in the future, and that employee parking lot, you know, is really an area that we may want to maintain for future growth.
Yeah.
And so that could be problematic to look at that. And then really, if you were saying, well, the employee parking lot, let's say you say, well, we're gonna lease it and it goes away, well, then they gotta park in the other lot, and that's just fewer spaces for everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, when we first started talking about the food hall item,
And
I
Keith,
swear
I'm
I-
sorry, could you turn on your
Oh.
microphone?
Sorry, I'd swear I heard numbers more like 200, you know, not 400, that were what was needed, because, you know, the employee parking lot certainly is not that big. So if you need that, you've got to do either, you know, some kind of combination of sharing and new facilities. And, you know, the question is, well, okay, if it's new facilities, who's going to pay for new facilities? Well, you know, that might be OAF land. OAF is not a builder of parking lots. We don't own assets. We raise money for the aquarium. And so it certainly isn't OAF. And so, you know, is there any advantage to the JAA to do that? I don't know that either. Offhand, I'm not sure what that would be. So, you know, the question is, if something new gets done, how does it get done? You know, so you may say, there's land across the street, we would be willing to do some kind of a lease arrangement that in essence becomes funding that goes to JAA over the long term, more like an endowment funding, kind of like the deal with the hotel. Although, you know, I don't know what the right number is for something like that. I don't know much about shared parking. But then the question is, how does it get funded?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's an open question, certainly.
So if I understand you, you would suggest that the right equation is some form of shared parking in combination with new parking.
It'd have to be,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there just are not physically enough spaces.
So, and you're also assuming that in those 88 spaces, assuming that becomes 100% shared parking.
No, that wasn't what I said.
Well, let's just say it was. Assume it was a shared parking agreement, and the tenant, the visitors to the food hall can use all those 88 spaces. That pretty much eliminates any potential growth on the aquarium moving north. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if we
Yeah.
did an agreement with
You'd
someone,
like to
it
keep that
would.
option open.
Well, I think that's developed over the last probably two and a half years.
Yeah.
That, you know, there's some thought that, you know, when the existing building goes down, that, you know, is that a place where, you know, we have some other type of a venue as the aquarium?
Would you say that the average member in OAF is assuming that growth would go north, or would it go east to the river? Because we've always assumed it would go east.
I think in general, I think we've always looked at it to say that, you know, if you're talking commercial growth and things like that, it's really gonna be south and, you know, kind of through the whole period from the aquarium to the river. I think we've always looked at that and said that's expansion, opportunities for the aquarium, because, you know, if we end up getting rid of all the land around the aquarium, then you never can have any possibility of growth. And, you know, we're right at the beginning junctures of the capital campaign right now. And, you know, who knows where that's gonna take us. But, you know, even if the 88 were in play, okay, fine, you need another you need another 320.
Yeah.
And, you know, that doesn't physically exist. And, you know, let's face it, the reality is, if somebody shows up, they're gonna park wherever it's convenient. That's gonna be the reality. And so, you know, if we say, oh, it's just a shared parking agreement, well, I can guarantee you half the people are gonna park on the hotel lot.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not, the hotel's not gonna be happy with that.
Okay. Thank you, Keith.
So,
Great.
I don't know, Kenny, if I
We'll just go round
relayed
table
our
up here.
conversation, but
Let's keep it up here for now, and then we'll circle back to Kenny. Craig, got any thoughts?
Yes and no. We've talked about the expansion of the aquarium for a while. And I know getting the things we need to do with it. And like he said, I know they're talking going east and going south, which looks like there's more room to do stuff, because going north, they're going to be cutting their own throat with parking and things. So that's going to eliminate that. But having Inspiration Hall in between it, it's definitely going to be an issue of the parking. But if the foundation is interested in land west of Aquarium Drive being utilized, yeah, it's going to incumbent on the city, JPWA, to do some funding to put something in there. But it's back to what we discussed a couple years ago when all this come to light. This land has been sitting there for 20 years and nothing's been done. And I guess if there's a frustration is a good word for it, my frustration is that we're trying to get something done, but money's always an issue. You don't care what we do, it's going to be an issue. And like he said, that, you know, the foundation's getting ready to start up a funding drive for the aquarium to do stuff. But to bring more people in, we're going to have the parking spaces. We're going to have something for them to do. Eating places, or the high five when that comes to fruition. So I'm looking, I like the idea of going west underneath the power lines, because technically we've talked that nothing can be put under there on a, I guess, enough where people, if somebody pulls a car in there and parks it, yeah, they can go in and do stuff. Restaurants and things, I think, Chris, you kind of mentioned that some of that establishments could go there. But as is mentioned on this, you know, we've got only so much land, and once it's gone, it's gone. But we're not going to have any more thriving businesses coming in and doing stuff if we don't back off and say, okay, we're going to utilize some of this land, we're going to utilize some of this money, we're going to do some parking or something and do things. You know, talking to Kenny beforehand, I didn't realize that the frustration that they're having people parking in the grass, even after we've added parking spaces. I mean, that's a good thing for the aquarium, man. People are coming, you know, and they're willing to park and walk and stuff. But how long does that last? If it gets rainy, gets bad weather, they're not going to want to park out there, and they're going to come and say, oh, the parking lot's full, let's go elsewhere. You know, if we had the magic number, say, let's put a parkade, you know, what can you do with a parkade? And if that's the case, like where it shows the fun box, if we put a parkade there, you know, how many could we get there? A couple of hundred, 300? I don't know. That would really blossom our parking. But where's that money come from? So, yeah, I don't have any wild ideas. Those are just my throwing out things.
Okay, thank you, Craig. John, you're up.
Yeah, actually, what Craig had mentioned about Kenny's feedback on parking, if we're parking in the grass right now, that becomes a critical factor. I think the key is that if we're going to do a shared parking agreement, we need to stay consistent with what we've done with other planning developments, other PUDs, which is going to be looking at not only the parking study for Inspiration Hall, but for the aquarium. And if we had information from Kenny to say, what's the current capacity, what's utilization on any given day, we got to factor that in, because if they're already at 80 or 90%, then trying to do a shared parking agreement with an equal number of vehicles would likely not be a winning solution. Also in agreement that we have to be cautious with limited land use. We have to plan for expansion. And then also the idea of moving to the west, lost opportunity costs, which is better for us, more retail potentially going in there, or utilization of parking space for what we have now. There's also a number of things that we don't know yet. Again, how many people are going to be drawn to the aquarium simply because we've added food venues that they didn't have options for before. So I think we're going to see growth that we can't factor in. What I think, if it were me, what I would be looking at is build some contingency in any agreement. I think shared parking is feasible as a starting point, but we can't paint ourselves into a corner. Leave some language in an agreement that basically says if we have to expand in order to accommodate parking for both the new food venue and the aquarium, that there would be some shared cost and development of parking, whether it's across the west side or in another direction. That way we're not bearing the full brunt of any development costs there.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Just a couple other thoughts is when we talk about the land usage and expansion plans, this isn't the only developer and the only parcel we're in discussions with. And so land is becoming more of a premium as time goes. This also isn't the only shared parking agreement we're in discussions with. And so there's going to be even more pressure on the parking. From the center of the main parking lot to the Inspiration Hall site, it's 800 feet. Nobody's going to park 800 feet from a restaurant. And so I think it's just going to be more feasible to explore something more proximal to the place the person is going.
Chris, do you think there's any possibility we could look at shared parking agreement with Village on Main? I mean, if you're at this food hall, makes me wonder if we had shared parking with Village on Main, which is that parking lot in the east is almost always mostly empty. Of course, I understand that the building isn't completely leased or not even close, but I wonder how far it is from there to there. If it's 800 feet from there to there, then it looks like it's 600, 700. It looks shorter to me. It looks like maybe it's the same. So I'm not guessing people would walk us up a sidewalk, walk up the levee and walk down and across the street to get to a restaurant.
You know, and we don't have a sidewalk yet.
There's no sidewalk there.
There is a sidewalk now,
Okay.
yeah.
I can tell you right now, with the potential growth of the aquarium, and I personally wouldn't support any path forward that doesn't involve the applicant bringing some parking to the equation. We're setting the aquarium up for failure. When this mall opens, there's going to be a lot of demand for every square foot of dirt and grass that's out there. Somebody's going to have to bring parking. Kenny, you're up.
I agree. Unfortunately, the aquarium is growing, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. In this situation, it's unfortunate somebody can answer that, that'd be awesome.
So you're seeing on a busy day even with the new parking lot, every parking spot's full and they're still parking down south in the grass?
They're parking in the grass, that's correct.
So how often does that happen?
Not often, not often, but we hope it is often.
Yeah.
And we are growing. So, I mean, we're up 5% already for this quarter, just in attendance. And I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's, that's 15 or 20,000 people. We keep doing that, and then we bring all these other businesses here, and our attendance grows even more. And honestly, my goal is to have 600,000 people walk through that door eventually, and I think one of the ways we're gonna be able to do that is by staying open late during the summer.
Yeah.
So that kinda interferes with, I mean, most aquariums that are in, a high traffic area that's entertainment based, they have summertime hours that are, they don't close till 9. I'd like to see that, but ultimately, what do I do with guests? I just don't know what to do with them. I mean, I'm all for getting on board with just about anything. I love progress. I wanna see all those businesses there, I really do. But it's kinda one of those things, I mean, if you have a 2-car garage, are you buying 5 cars? I mean, I want them to be there, but we don't have, we can just say yes all day, and then it just comes to a head, but.
I'm also thinking about your customers. I see a lot of young kids, a lot of strollers, and I don't think those folks are willing to walk 500 feet.
Well, no, and if our attendance goes down because of parking,
Yeah.
there's no way to reverse that. The genie's
I
out.
I think a couple going to dinner is probably willing. Some couples are willing to walk that far to go eat dinner, but to get a family out of a van and to drag those kids 500 feet to get to the aquarium kind of lessens the experience.
Well, and I said it before that, when we had the smaller parking space, and we had people parking in that grassy area that's next to the turnpike. But when a lot of people, when they go somewhere like that, it's a high, crowded area, and they see a parking lot that's completely overfilled, a lot of people don't go. They just say, well, we'll go another day, right? And I'm definitely one of those people. If I've got kids with me and the whole disaster, and I go somewhere and it is just packed wall to wall and there's not a place to park, I'm turned around. And so I find it interesting that we built a bigger parking lot, and I think it encourages people to go ahead and come to the aquarium when we're packed inside, but it doesn't seem as packed. So they come. So they just fill that one too until they're parking in the grass. So, I mean, I'm extremely optimistic about the Oklahoma Aquarium. I believe we're killing it right now. Our revenue is up 23% since last year. And last year was no slouch. So, and it just keeps going up. I mean, like, my job is so easy to keep Chris happy. I almost don't even have to be there. It just kind of sells itself. You know what I mean?
We've heard that from other people too.
I mean, the day we lose attendance is the day I'm gonna have some serious problems in my life. And I don't wanna lose attendance because we don't have a place to park. It's just one of those things. And as far as expanding, you're right, Mayor, that the expansion of the aquarium proper, yes, is to the east, for sure, exhibits. But I'd like to dream bigger, and, why can't the aquarium open a separate venue that's not an aquarium? Why can't it be something else? Whether it be a discovery center that is way, 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 way better than the one that was built on Riverside. Why can't it be a lot of different things that are entertainment-based, that's not necessarily living? Do we want to do that in the future? And if so, that would either need to go south or north, or do we just abandon that altogether and just focus on the aquarium? I don't have the answer to that. I'd like to do a separate venue. I was wanting to do that with the miniature something else comes in, now let's use up 100 spaces at the big parking lot. Well, now I wish I had my 88 spaces back, you know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those things that the cookie just starts getting eaten from all sides, and that's what my concerns are. But I want these businesses here, but I do. But unless people can park on a roof, I don't know where to put them.
Thank you, sir.
I've got one other question for you.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about the west of the Aquarium Place. What is the, number one, what is the viability that we would have retail underneath the transmission lines? And then secondly, where you were talking about an alternate location, if we were to look at overflow parking during peak seasons, cost analysis of trying to provide some type of a shuttle during those seasons versus utilizing land, and then move the parking overflow at a better place where we're not boxing ourselves in.
There's been some pie-in-the-sky discussions about a shuttle service but mostly related to the mall area. I mean, I think the goal, one of my goals as a consumer is when I get a good parking spot, I don't want to leave it. And when you're in an outlet mall and you really only want to go to 2 stores and you're driving down the middle and you're parked a quarter of a mile from the store you want to go to, then you and your wife and kid eventually have that debate of, do we get in the car and try our luck or do we walk? Hilton Head Island's a good example of the best shuttle system I've ever seen, and all the vendors pay for it and the consumer never pays for it. And everywhere you go, there's a van waiting for you and they will take you to 18 predetermined places and they expect you to stop and spend your money. That could be in our future. I don't see it happening necessarily for another couple of years before it's really necessary. But I've been contacted by a few entrepreneurs who want to do just that and all of a sudden turn Jenks into a tax, a shuttle service with golf carts and different things. But I don't know. I don't think we're quite there yet. Your first question was the viability of a parking lot or the viability of retail underneath the power lines? Chris, can it?
Yeah, there's no viability. What I was talking about was retail or restaurants immediately east or west of the power lines, because you can't build anything other than parking underneath. And so I think that from what I hear from this discussion, it sounds like this body wants to protect the existing spaces, and so I don't know if the developer or the consultants have a proposal for, like, what would the developer want to see out of, is shared parking optimal? Is additional parking west of Aquarium Drive an option? What would you guys want to see?
And before that, has anyone in staff determined how many parking spaces we can get east of the power lines in that little trapezoid or parallelogram or whatever you call that thing? Yeah, how many parking, have we done anything with that? Do we know?
We have a conceptual plan just south of that.
Okay.
So, right immediately west of the existing, down. Yeah, there, I think there's something like 50 or 60 spaces that could be put
Okay.
in.
Okay. So if 50 or 60 can go in there, then you could imagine more potentially up in that. And you can't get anywhere near the levees. Can we go west of the power lines between Village and Main, or is that all protected by the levee?
No, we could, but
We could.
it's owned by the OAF.
Okay, well, we can have just conversations with the OEA.
So,
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we're exhausted. Your turn.
Yeah, you guys got it covered.
We have your name and who
John
you-
Droz,
and your-
28 North Water, Walpo, Oklahoma.
And what do you work with?
I'm working with 66 Engineering, Route 66 Engineering.
Thank you, sir.
100% understand the concerns for the aquarium. I mean, I think that's first and foremost what you guys are here to protect. I understand parking. I drew Walmarts for the first 10 years of my career. We overparked everything, and they were full on Christmas. And they're full for 2 days around Christmas. I think in this situation, you're running into a lot of non-simultaneous use until the aquarium is open till 9 o'clock at night. I mean, that's when this is gonna get used. Yes, it's gonna give you guys some places to eat at lunch. I wish this was going in Sepulpa, because I have about 4 places to eat at lunch, about the same as you guys have here. This is gonna give you guys a ton of new options. It's gonna give the residents a ton of new options for lunch, but that's not gonna be the bulk of the use of this. This is gonna be a place where people go at night. And as far as I know, and as far as you guys have said, the aquarium's not really open at night right now. As it was pointed out, the main entrance to the aquarium is 800 feet roughly from where the front doors, this will have doors on a few sides, but where the main front doors of this building are gonna be is about 800 feet from the front doors of the aquarium. That means that these exterior parks here may be accidentally used. The parking where the quarantine is being moved from and possibly redone, that would be the main area where, that would be utilized. I think that what you see in this parking study that they've done, it's not 500, I think it's closer to 300. That's also a peak parking study. That says in our peak times, we'll need 300 parking spaces. They're not gonna, on a random Tuesday night or Tuesday afternoon, need 300 parking spaces. I mean, they're gonna be hopefully 100 people there, or 100 parking spaces used at that time. One thing, if we were to place any parking on the west side of Aquarium Drive, I think that's a good idea. I don't want to speak to any of the money side of this. I'm just a civil engineer talking about parking. If you were to put some parking on the east side or the west side of Aquarium Drive, that could be utilized by this. But I can tell you, as somebody who's going to park as close as I can to whatever, if the parking along this north drive around the aquarium is closer than the parking that's on the east side of, or the west side of Aquarium Drive, I'm gonna park down here because it's not being used. And that's awesome. I go take my kids to the aquarium often. I've never been there during one of these times when people are parking in the grass. At least not the grass around the edges. I've seen people park in the grass up here close, because that's closer than a parking spot that's outside, on the outside edge. But I think there's a lot of great options. I think, when they showed us this project, I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. There's not very many projects that get me excited anymore. I think this is an exciting project, and I'd hope that the city of Jenks is excited. I'd hope that the aquarium's excited to have this next to them. This is a really cool concept, and if we can figure out something on parking, this is going to be great for the city and great for the aquarium.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments for?
Just since you've worked on parking lots before, like you said, people are gonna try to park in the closest parking lot, so they'll try to park regardless in the employee parking lot, and they'll try to park in the hotel parking lot.
Right.
And, I don't think the hotel understands that yet, but,
I think, I don't know what the hotel parking looks like. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
jammed up.
I have no idea if they
Probably a couple
are,
days a year type thing.
if they're not.
Like I said, parking is developed for Christmas or a Christmas type event. That's why our parking study says on a Friday or Saturday night, we may need 300 spaces. I don't remember what the exact number is. I think they've got it, but
Do you know what the average is?
it would be half of that on a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, I bet they're hoping for 100 cars at a time. I mean, there's going to be some table turnover, but as far as peak, that's the 300. The average is probably closer to 150. And those parking studies are still very conservative. I mean, as you've seen some of these big box lots, Targets, Walmarts, and everybody, when everybody came back in the last 10 years and has said, this is what parking actually is, now you see 1 acre outlots busted off along the whole frontage of those stores where they've resold it because they've never used that parking, they've never needed that parking.
Does city staff have access to your parking study?
Yeah,
You've
both of
seen
them.
it? Okay. Can you remind us what's this hall's looking like nowadays? I mean, if I remember, it's not what it was.
No, it's kind of
Walk
a,
us
I wish
through-
I had pictures of it, because it is a really neat
Walk us through the
design.
numbers as far as locations, restaurants, how many entities are in it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
that'd be-
architect.
that'd be
knows
good,
right
yeah, if you could.
outside of it, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Hi, good day. My name is Yaz Dawkins. I'm with KSQ Design.
Thank you, sir.
So as far as the food hall is concerned, it will have 8 concept kitchens on the ground floor, 2 dine-in restaurants on the second floor. On the third floor will be an event space, something like wedding receptions, that type of activity.
And what's a concept kitchen,
So
generally
it's-
speaking?
Generally similar to Mother Road Market. So you walk in, you'll have like a Buddha Bowl or Lone Wolf, something of that nature there.
Would you say it's, the design, it's basically is it a Mother Road Market? Is that what it looks like?
I don't want to say Mother Road Market, but yeah,
Okay.
we're close to it. But
Okay.
it's definitely an improved version.
Okay. Architecturally improved?
Yes, all the way around.
Of
yes,
course, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Square footage?
I have it right here. The first floor, 16,000 square feet. Second floor, 11,000 square feet. Third floor, again, 11,000 square feet. So we're looking at around 39,000 square feet total for the building.
Can you tell us why the design changed?
I don't know why. it
Were you
changed
involved
from-
did you do the first design?
No, we were not a part
So
of the
you,
first
do
design.
you remember? Okay.
I can't give
You
any-
weren't a part of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so 38,000 square feet. 8 concept kitchens that
Correct.
could change seasonally.
Correct.
So you may get this, you may get that.
That is correct.
2 established restaurants.
Correct, similar to a Charleston's of that nature.
Okay. And upstairs is all meeting space,
An event space, correct.
event space? Okay. All right.
Yeah, 'cause
As I remember, the original one, the event space was kind of on the bottom towards the river.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of something that was more like kind of a U-ish
Courtyard, yeah,
thing where
is-
things went around it and the
What's- yeah.
entertainment outdoor
What's the ambiance?
space.
Is there an outside component to this?
So yes, we do have a outside seating area on the ground, the second and the third floor as well.
Okay.
So I have a little image if you want to take a look at it. and
Yeah,
Send you guys an electronic document.
Do you have it up on a website we could tap into real quick?
No,
No.
sir, not yet.
Okay.
I'm passing it around.
Oh, okay.
It's got the original one.
Okay.
And the old one, or the current one and the old one.
So that, okay. Yeah.
And so based on this feedback, I don't know if it would be helpful for you guys and the developer to bring a proposal to the JAA for whatever parking.
Okay.
Well, this is a discussion, but I think, I'm reading the room, I think the tone here is, the aquarium is, there's zero compromise in the aquarium. That's got to be there in 100 years.
Okay.
I mean, it is our lieutenant governor says it's the front door for all tourism in the state of Oklahoma. Gathering place is probably a big draw to Tulsa, lots of people. So there's probably zero compromise, and I don't think we ever want to put ourselves in a position, I probably shouldn't be telling this to you. You drew the thing up, but you notice you did draw it with some parking spaces too.
You did.
I noticed. So,
So those parking stalls to the south there.
yeah. But I would think, for OAF and JAA and for Kenny, there's going to be a little, OAF's always been pretty protective of the aquarium, and rightfully so. This is what the mission is, but I think this is a good place to start a discussion. I mean,
Yeah.
we can keep talking all night if you guys want, but does anyone else want to weigh in? I mean, city planner, Marseille, you got any thoughts on this? No? Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I would just like to say I would love to see this project
Yeah.
go through. I think it can work extremely well with the aquarium.
Yeah.
If we can reach some sort of compromise with the parking, each party we can benefit greatly from it.
Yeah. From a straight zoning perspective, if this was out and not, if this was in a place where we had plenty of land, how many parking spots would they be required in traditional zoning?
Per the.
No compromise, no agreements, no shared, nothing.
Based on the uses that they are proposing, with 3 floors, first floor being 16,000 square feet, a food court area with a concept kitchen, second floor, 10,000 square feet, restaurant area with kitchen, third floor, business suites, and I think they
Well,
amended that to event venue.
Correct. So everything will now be classified as an A2, an assembly space for all 3 floors.
Yeah.
So it would just be assembly. And at the time, it was business suites, and the parking study said the project could reach excess of 429 spaces at peak.
429 at peak, okay. What's the maximum capacity of the building at full capacity with everybody's assembled and everybody's eating in the meeting
here.
spaces?
So if it's fully packed, all 3 floors, somewhere around 1,500 occupants.
Okay. All right. Keith, anything else?
No.
Craig? John? Matt? Mr. Shrout? Okay. All right. Anyone else from the team wanna? Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4. Item 4 is a discussion and update related to the High Five Entertainment Development Complex. This is page 82. It'll be our last discussion for the evening, and there will be no votes on this item either. Who's taking the lead on this?
I'll just say that, so High Five is an entertainment venue that the city has been talking to. They're interested in going on the grassy area, part of the grassy area south of the existing parking lot. I think that they're, the lot that we're talking about, split from that, let's call it 9 acres, is, I don't know if Teresa or Marseille knows, 2 acres, 3 acres? 4.6. And so we had it appraised, I think it appraised at 2.8 million. And so the city has an incentive for High Five, and the issue with the land is it's owned by the city but leased to the JAA for 99 years. So I think we're 20 years into that lease. There's 70 years left on it. In order for that lot to change ownership, it would have to leave the lease would have to be, it would have to be removed from the lease, which would take a vote of the JAA. I know that council is interested in seeing High Five on this property, and so we've done the lot split, but it would still need to be released from the lease. And I think that, you know, the 2 last steps that we need to think about are, do we want to release it from the lease to allow High Five to develop? And if so, what is the consideration given to the JAA for releasing it from that what is now probably a 70-year lease? And so I don't really know that they're, I guess in my opinion, I'm not the chair of the meeting, but this is just kind of bringing this to everyone's attention. And I think that this body needs to think about what is appropriate consideration for releasing this land from the lease, if there was will or desire to do so.
Thank you, Chris. And Teresa, as far as a contractual maneuver, moving this lease is not a big deal, as long as JA supports it?
No, yeah.
Okay.
We've got a form that we've used in the past. We can separately outline whatever the consideration is. We
Mhm.
include that as part of the lease agreement, but it doesn't need to seem complex.
Okay.
Unless some complex is breached, but
Well, but
Okay.
you're also going to have it released from it's pledged under the bonds
Mhm.
also.
Yeah,
So
that'd be when
it's,
it's all prepared, but we don't want to move forward until everything's
sure.
ready.
Okay. All right, well, Harvey, Keith, since you're up, you got any thoughts on this one?
Well, just FYI, you know, if you remember what the council approved, it's a multi-step process. And that first step really is getting I guess I'd call it the architectural side of it agreed upon with the OAF. And that discussion we've got set up to start.
You talk about the architecture, the building itself?
It's all under, in Marseille, help me, it's what's the camp? Specific use permit, yeah. And so that basically means that it has to fit certain parameters, not just the city's parameters, which is a requirement in there, but also the other parties' parameters. So, you know, we're meeting, is it tomorrow, Matt? Yeah. To have a discussion about that, you know, and that's kind of that first step. So I just wanted you to understand that is underway. And then, you know, kind of the next steps involve, you know, releasing and so forth. And you know, that's something we're also discussing at the OAF is, you know, I guess the question kind of comes down to is what is the JAA going to get in relation to agreeing to release it? Because, you know, just to say, oh yeah, we'll release it, that just, I'm sorry, to me, makes very little sense without some compensation, basically. And so the question is, what kind of a value proposition is there? And I don't know the answer to that right now.
You mean compensation apart in addition to what High Five's already agreed upon with?
But
our
what
economic-
High Five's agreed to is stuff with the city.
Yeah,
That has nothing to do with JAA.
okay. How about a ton of visitors into the aquarium, all same age, same demographic?
You know,
This land's been sitting there for a long time.
the land's been sitting there for a long time, yeah. But it's been sitting there, and we know it's of a high value from the perspective of the aquarium and the JAA.
Yeah,
So you want to release it, what's the value that the JAA gets out of it?
okay.
And, you know, if you're saying, oh, well, it's, you know, gee, it'll just be more people, well, okay, that's possible. We don't know that, but it's possible. So I think there is a question there that we need to consider with our fiduciary responsibilities to the JAA.
Chris, is High Five aware of or Marseille, are they aware of the exterior facade requirements that we're talking about? Or do they are they pretty much have their design and that's it? Are they aware of that?
They've been very amenable. They
Okay.
are willing to work with the city and the JAA.
Okay, because the
with
last
whatever
I heard,
standards.
the only entity that we were kind of molding into shaping them to look a certain way was the Climb Gym. I didn't know we were doing this to High Five. So is this something we're going to apply to anyone who's anywhere near the aquarium campus? They're all going to have a similar, like an HOA type of a look?
The specific use permit was written in such a way that, at the time it was written and approved, they wanted everything to match the aquarium. And they mentioned the Cape Cod theme. But there are
Yeah.
very little standards involved in that. And I was invited, I believe last week, maybe a week before, to meet with the OAF, and we talked about those design standards. While they, and you can correct me at any time, while they were not particularly married to the phrase Cape Cod, they would like to see a cohesive theme on the campus, and I think the aquarium staff reiterated that as well. So they were able to coordinate a meeting with Mr. Helms, local architect, who will kind of just go through that process with them and kind of shore up some standards that we don't have to have an in-depth, deep dive for every project that comes along. If we know what the standards are, then I can make sure that those are met, and then when I send it over to the OAF for approval, they already know what the standards are. I say, yes, it meets the standards, and then it's a simpler, cleaner process. And we have a more cohesive campus and a genuine opportunity at a destination versus a patchwork quilt.
Okay. And question for Keith and Matt, when do you expect OAF is going to come to some conclusion as to what they want to recommend the JAA? Because I would say this before you answer. As far from Chris and I know, High Five is one of the few entities that has contacted us in the last couple of years that hasn't said, give me all this for free and I hope to bring customers to your door. This is one of the best economic development agreements we've had. And I think we're way past the point in our city's history with the mall coming to fruition that we don't need to give away anything ever again. I think we are in the position to, I think the price of this dirt is rising all the time, and I think we should be selective. We only have so much green space left. I think we're in a position now where we can be very careful with it. But I also just I think High Five is one of the best deals that we've seen in a while. So I just want you to remind the OAF members that they're not coming in and saying, give me, give me, give me, and I hope to bring you some business. They've been a really good business partner. I think Chris would agree. But if we're talking about some sort of way to get out of this lease, I would suggest you guys bring us what you think would be your proposal, and we'll see if we can find some common ground. Because if it's not High Five, in 2 years it's going to be somebody else. There's going to be plenty of people knocking on the door.
Yeah, there's no issue on OAF's part with the particular developer.
Yeah.
In fact, the ask was made of us last Wednesday, and we are expediting the process. We passed a motion to empower the executive committee to make this decision, and we set up a meeting for tomorrow. So
Is that a new?
on a
Yeah.
timeline, I think we're
Yeah.
moving pretty
Okay.
expeditiously.
I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know you guys could do that. So is that new, that you can have the executive?
No, that is not new.
Okay, good. That's good. No, that's good. That's a very good timeline. Next week would be great.
Yeah, and.
I wasn't
just
even
Corey-
expecting it to be this year. I was just wanting to
Yeah,
make
and-
sure these conversations are always moving.
And Corey, I don't think we would ever say to somebody, oh, you need to totally redesign, but we might say, gosh, can you use this kind of color or that kind of
Yeah.
color? Or can you make it a little bit more like this or like that? But if somebody came in and said, gee, I want to build this giant glass box, that's 5 stories tall and it's totally well, that wouldn't fit the look or feel of that campus,
Yeah, I
as an
agree.
example.
Yeah.
But, I think it's more around just trying to get some level of consistency if we can. So it just doesn't look like, everybody just came up with, whatever they wanted. And so you've got a purple building here, a pink building there, or whatever. So it looks a little more cohesive.
Agree completely. Okay. And when you say Cape Cod theme, that's what resonates with me. When I saw the original renderings, that's what it feels like to me.
The campus?
Yeah. Well, High Five anyway. Wasn't it like white and light blue and white? All those nice East Coast colors? Wasn't it? White and light blue and pastel and green, like the ocean? Okay, well, they're amenable to the work, right?
I believe they will be.
Okay.
And I think that,
Well, they have to be. So, okay. So no issues with them coming in, getting in line with the look and feel of the aquarium campus? Okay.
ask for feedback.
Okay, all right. What else, gentlemen? Anything else?
Quick question, do we, for our meeting tomorrow, do we have all the renderings? Because the way he described it, I haven't necessarily seen that, I haven't seen that one yet.
No, I remember it looking very similar to the one at Tulsa Hills, that similar colors.
Main event.
Yeah, but that light white colored stucco and ocean green and blue.
You have all the renderings that are current, and I have discussed them with Mr. Helms. I will not be able to attend the meeting. I am otherwise baking pies tomorrow. So you have everything, and we had a great conversation today with Mr. Helms. I think that you're in very good hands, and the overall goal is to that I suggested was finding a cohesive set of standards that could be applied on a case-by-case basis as you all move forward with approvals.
Okay. I just remember High Five looking much more like the aquarium than the climbing gym. So I thought our focus was on the climbing gym more than anything.
It's on all of it.
It's been a long time since I've seen the picture, but that's how I remembered it. All right, any other discussion? Mr. Brown, Matt, Keith, anyone? Mr. Murray?
Kind of going back a little bit to the previous discussion and incorporating this, I'm not necessarily a proponent of build it and they will come, but I know, and it's apples to oranges, but when the BOK Center was built, I wasn't excited about doing something like that and building it, but I know that they have surpassed, because if we had not ever built it, we would never get what we've gotten. Well, it's going to be the same thing, I think, if we have a main event, we have an inspiration hall, we're not going to get the activities and the businesses and people coming if we don't offer it. When the BOK was built, the city of Tulsa didn't build any parking lots. People had to find a place to park, and they paid for parking. And I'm not saying that that's the case that we have to look at here, but is it possible that American Parking, as an example, would they come in and put a parking lot west of Aquarium Place and charge people to park? I mean, that's a feasibility. I'm reaching out of the box. Is that something that we could solicit to say, hey, we'll let you use land, you pay us a per vehicle percentage or however it worked out. They build the parking lot, they collect the money, and then we get a percentage, and that way it's kind of helping out everybody we need to help out. So I'm throwing that out for thought.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Anyone else? Last call. Item 4, High Five. I don't think we are. Are we allowed to? Sure. I'm going to limit you to 3 minutes. All right. Take your name and address, please.
777 West 106th Street, Jenks. How seriously do you look at the Dover Coal study for this aquarium drive in place when you're talking about new development? Because on that study, you know, it shows like 2,800 parking spaces, I think for the garage, or 2,000, it's one or the other. So is that, when you're looking at this corner, and which parcel are you saying for High Five? Just the actual parcel it's on, or that whole piece where other businesses are marked on the Dover Coal comprehensive plan?
Just the 4 acres on the
Where it's like
east
designated.
side of this main piece of property there.
Yeah.
And the issue with the Dover Coal study is, I think the whole idea was to show the concept of what would be a fully developed, dense, walkable campus. And that's what they provided. And so we knew going in, asking for that 2,800 parking spaces aren't going to come with just High Five or Inspiration Hall, but there's going to be a tipping point when we realize we need to build a parking, either we or someone needs to build a parking structure to accommodate the optimal development of this campus. And so who uses the parking structure? I doubt that people visiting the aquarium would want to be using a parking structure. But, you know, if it's office space, if it's entertainment, maybe that they would be more, those guests would be more willing to use a parking structure. And so I think the difficulty we have now is we're not there yet. We know we may be there at some time, and we certainly will be there if we actually want to develop this campus like it really could be developed. But having these one-off conversations with Inspiration Hall, with High Five, that's why back in August, we brought 2 developers to the OAF to just discuss, if we had a master developer and we said, here's what the OAF wants to see, here's what the city wants to see, please develop this property, I think that would be a much easier approach for everybody. It might be more work on the front end, but we wouldn't be spending all this time having one-off conversations about parking for Inspiration Hall and parking for High Five, and what the deal is for the next concept that wants to be on the campus, and how, what's the consideration to the JAA, and, how are we going to park it? And I really think we need a master developer.
Yeah, personally, when I looked at that, it's nice to see what you could aim for versus what you just said, kind of the back, piecing it together. And so is that something that the chamber then looks at too to help drive business, or?
Well, I mean, I think the
Study.
chamber is supportive of getting this developed and having some sort of master developer with a master plan, whether it's the Dover Coal plan or whether it's some, I would imagine, edited plan based on feedback from the OAF and JAA. But I really think that for our sake and for the aquarium's sake, it'd really be good to have, we already have these two concepts that want to be on the campus, but if we want more and if we want to see it develop and not just be grass that we're paying to mow every summer, then we need a master plan and a master developer.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
Thank you. All right. Last call for trustees. Any further discussion on item 4? All right, thank you very much. We'll close item 4. Moving on to our staff report. Mr. Alexopoulos.
I know we're short of time. I'm going to make this super quick. Like I mentioned earlier, our attendance is up 5%. This is after we've raised ticket prices the first time, and then the second time. Our weekly attendance has not taken a hit at all. As a matter of fact, it's gone up. So that's great news. Our revenue, like I said, is up 23% for the quarter, which is amazing considering we only have a 5% increase in attendance. So I think the increase ticket prices has been imperative and hugely responsible for that. We're gearing up for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Halloween went really well. Our revenue surpassed last year. Splash fundraiser, OAF fundraiser Splash, scheduled for February 24th, and River Spirit is the presenting sponsor. As far as projects are concerned, the pollinator garden is well underway in the construction. They're moving quite rapidly with that. They've already almost completed the irrigation, and their concrete work is complete. Repairs to the existing shark quarantine facility has been complete, so going into the winter, we feel a lot better about that. Construction of our new aquatic research center is moving forward, and they're working on the underground utilities at the moment. Construction drawings are in the process of being created for the south bathrooms to go for bid or for quote. And the renderings have already been done, and it's looking really sharp. The sign has been removed from the south of the building, which was incorrectly sized or constructed, and the new sign that is backlit is actually going to be installed now middle of December, so we're actually ahead on that. And so that's what I have. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Kenny. Do you plan on holding ticket prices where they are for now, or you have a plan?
Yeah, for right now. I mean,
Okay.
I think we need to go through one summer and see where we're at, and also keep monitoring what other aquariums are doing.
Yeah.
But we every day I'm looking at the attendance and I'm looking at the revenue, more so than I'm looking at my own stocks. So, and they're looking really good, and so we just kind of, I think, just do it by feel, and I think we should probably wait through at least one more summer.
Okay.
But it is proving successful, very.
Are you making an event out of the new sign, or is that not a thing?
Not at the moment, but
Okay.
we want to make an event of the pollinator garden.
Yeah.
Especially, we want to kind of couple that with the flagpole and the Matt, what are we calling that? For the Circle of Honor. At that point, we want to start putting the bricks in for the Circle of Honor and kind of celebrate that as well. And that will definitely be done by spring break.
Cool. All right. Any questions for Kenny? All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Anything else, Mr. Shrout?
No, sir.
All right, great. 6:13, we are adjourned. Have a good evening and happy Thanksgiving.